it's a little terrifying because you absolutely cannot miss.
Goalies now are completely out of premium.
Not, right? Like, Canada doesn't have a ton of great options.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Hockey News Big Show. I'm your host, Katie Gaus, joined by Michael Traikos and Ryan Kennedy as we inch closer and closer to the Olympic break. But one player, guys, is already hanging out and on break, apparently, for roster management purposes. That is Artemi Panarin. The New York Rangers are listening, and it's pretty obvious that every team is somewhat interested in landing a guy like Panarin. Lots of teams, lots of rumors. So let's kick one off. The San Jose Sharks, one of the guys that are in that mix of being interested in the bread man. How do we feel about the thought of a Panarin Celebrini combo? And more importantly, are the Sharks at a point where they should be making a swing like this? We'll get into that before we talk about whether Panarin would be interested in going to San Jose. What do we think, Michael?
Well, first off, I don't like the fact that he's being held out presumptively to the Olympics until then. I think, one game is fine, 2 games, okay. But what are we talking about? Like a 2-week, he's just not going to play. And we're talking about a guy who arguably is the greatest free agent signing in New York Rangers history, a guy that's going to go down as one of their top all-time scorers. Don't like that. So make the deal already. Let's not wait until the Olympics or thereafter. As for the Sharks, that's a team that's playing with house money. We didn't expect them to be in this spot. Obviously, Macklin Celebrini is doing his thing, but he's not getting a whole lot of run support when it comes to scoring. So adding a guy like Panarin, I don't know if he'd play with Celebrini, but certainly on the power play and just overall offensively, it does give them, more than just secondary scoring. It gives them another guy that can take some of the offensive load.
Yeah, what do you think, Ryan? Does it make them a genuine threat if they land a guy like Panarin?
I don't know if it makes them a genuine threat this season, but I think it's a very good step for them to take. And if they get Panarin and that solidifies a playoff spot, I think that's very key. And I do think that, if he were to join the Sharks on a sort of like trade and then contract extension kind of deal, then you're really planning for the short term, and it looks very bright because I think Panarin still has some very good years in him, and I would love to see him with Celebrini. I think this also signals to the Sharks that it's time to take that next step. And what I like about this is they still have young talent in the pipeline developing, like a Michael Misa, for example. So this is a sort of team that could deal first-round draft picks in order to get Panarin and get that help now. The other thing it does, if they trade for Panarin, what does this summer look like for them, right? Like playing in California definitely has its advantages in terms of weather. I know it's Northern California, but they certainly don't have as much snow as we do. And if you have Panarin, if you have Celebrini, then all of a sudden other free agents might say, well, you know what? It's a pretty nice place to play. It's pretty chill. Maybe that's somewhere I want to go as a veteran. And then all of a sudden you've got a roster that's a little more fortified for next season. So to me, this is very intriguing.
Yeah,
you don't know when your time is. Like, we can all say that, the San Jose Sharks are ahead of schedule. Like, what is the schedule? Like, the schedule changes. And the Chicago Blackhawks, they might have been ahead of schedule when Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews helped them win a cup. I think that was in year 3. And year 2, they went pretty deep in the playoffs. So, if you've got the team going, you got to take advantage of it.
Yeah. And the big question with Panarin too is, again, he has this no move. Like, he's got to approve wherever he goes. So is San Jose a market you could see him saying yes to?
I think so. And it sounds like, from what I'm hearing, that he would be amenable to that. And again, you have to look at, Panarin as a player and a person. Like, he's already won and, he's already made a ton of money. So what's sort of left for his career? I think he probably does not want to go somewhere where he would get a lot of attention, i.e. a Canadian market. But again, like San Jose, that's like a nice landing place where there's not a lot of press. There's not a lot of pressure, but it does have a very nice fan base, and it does have the off-ice amenities where for somebody like that, it would be a nice sort of like soft landing spot, and you get to play with talented young players.
But there's terrible taxes.
That is true.
The one thing that will prevent them from being the next Florida Panther. Everyone come to San Jose. It's fun. We got a great vibe. Lots of good players want to be here. But California, that is the one thing holding them back. All right, well, let's keep the trade rumors going. Another team that's, they're in the mix for the Panarin conversation, like a lot of teams are, but there's also interest from the Dallas Stars in Calgary's Nazem Kadri and Blake Coleman. It seems pretty clear at this point that the Stars really want to get a top 9 forward, at least, to add to their playoff run. So what do we think about either of these forwards, Michael, for a fit in Dallas? And, is something like this enough, again, when you consider where they are in the Central and the teams they have to go up against?
Yeah, and I don't see a fit for Nazem Kadri in Dallas. Like, you look at their center depth, and they've got Rupe Hintz, they've got Wyatt Johnson, they've got Matt Duchene as their third-line center. So where exactly would Kadri fit in? Like, would he replace Duchene as a number 3 center and force Duchene to play on the wing? I guess. Like, when you look at their top 9, Katie, it's pretty impressive. Like, I'm not seeing a whole lot of holes there where you're saying, okay, we desperately need to bring in a Kadri, maybe a Coleman, because, let's face it, where he is right now, he's probably a bottom 6 forward more so than a top 6 forward. And he provides you with a lot of grit. And I still think he's got some speed, even at his age. But, Kadri to Dallas, I just don't see it unless there's an injury, looming where you're going, okay, we need to replace a center or a top 6 winger with this guy, because, I would more so look at maybe, adding to the back end. I think if you're going to have to face a Colorado or a Minnesota, I think defensively, that's where I think Dallas still needs to get a little better.
Yeah, I mean, it's always tempting to want to go out getting bigger names, but when you think about your opponents and they have a pretty clear picture of what those opponents are going to look like, the way that the playoff format shakes out, you kind of have to think that way. Ryan, what do you think?
I wholeheartedly agree with Mike. I think Dallas should use whatever assets they have to get another defenseman to shore up the blue line behind Heiskanen and Harley and Lindell. But I also do see the fit for Blake Coleman. I think this is a very underrated player. Lots of playoff experience, a playoff style of player. And maybe if they can't get a blue liner, they just sort of have to overpower teams with two-way forwards, right? And, Blake Coleman can be part of that solution. So I think that would be a pretty good fit for them either way. But ideally for me, I think if you could get Coleman and another defenseman, that would be kind of the ideal for Dallas.
Who is the next best defenseman out there, Ryan, in your mind? Because obviously Rasmus Anderson's off the board. Dougie Hamilton, I don't know. I wouldn't touch that contract personally, and it's so hard to make that one work. So who's the next guy that should be there? Is there even a guy that you'd be willing to part a first rounder for?
Maybe not a first rounder, but like Justin Falk in St. Louis. I think that would be somebody that if you had him even on your bottom pairing, that would give me a lot of confidence if I was going for a Stanley Cup. So I think, Falk would be the kind of guy that maybe you can get him for like a second and a third or something like that, or like a pick and a prospect, because he might be in high demand or high-ish demand. But you're right. I mean, there's not a ton of options out there.
Well, speaking of options, there's one team that loves to continue their pursuit to land the big fish. The Carolina Hurricanes, they're still fishing, and their line has broken on the last few attempts. I love fishing, so I'm throwing in all of my favorite
all the metaphors.
So is this the year they can finally get a big fish on the boat, aka could they finally get a big name to come to Carolina to help them make it a little bit further into the playoffs? And who do we think might be a good fit?
Well, Katie, their problem isn't getting the fish onto the boat. It's keeping that fish on the boat.
That's fair.
The fish tends to jump back in the water again.
Right. They need the mallet.
They think they got it, and then
like they got Rantanen last year, and to Ryan's point, they weren't able to kind of finish him off
on the boat. He was hanging half off the boat. They took a picture with it, and then it squirmed away.
Yeah.
It's like wah wah. And the year before, what they got Gensel, and again he didn't hang around. And Kuznetsov was I don't know if he was a big fish. He was kind of a fish that no one wanted, and they kind of grabbed. But to your point, I guess we keep asking this question about Carolina is never mind, can they get the big fish? Is can they get over the hump? And that's going to be asked of them until they get over the hump. And for some teams, getting to the conference final is a heck of a hump to even get to on a regular basis. But if it's going to happen, this is the year. Like, you look at the East, and we talked about this before. A lot of first timers are going to be in the playoffs. A lot of teams that haven't been around in a long time are going to be there. And you look at the Metro, and am I scared of potentially facing what might be the Pittsburgh Penguins or the New York Islanders in the first round if I'm the Canes? No. So it looks like you've got a great path to at least the conference final. And from there, you're going to face either maybe a Tampa or, like I said, a Detroit or a Buffalo or some team like that hasn't really been in the playoffs. So, this is the year to load up. I just don't know exactly what loading up means for the Hurricanes because, again, they're a pretty good team right now.
I know.
Yeah. For me, I think this is a potential landing spot for Nazem Kadri if they want to swing for the fences. And Carolina is kind of similar to Dallas, where they do have very good center depth. But if I were to kind of galaxy brain this, what if you put Nazem Kadri on a second line and shifted Logan Stankoven to the wing? Then you have Aho, Kadri, Jordan Stahl as your top three centers. Ooh. That's pretty nice, right? Yeah, that's a playoff style lineup. And Kadri is the type of guy who I think maybe he could play Carolina Hurricanes style hockey, where it very much is, get the puck in deep, like hammer on the forecheck, pressure all the time. Like Nazem Kadri, he has been one of the, the truly great two-way centers, especially in the playoffs, if you think about what he did during Colorado's run in particularly. So I think that could be a fit. And they do have the cap space to make that move. They could also, maybe jettison Jesperi Kotkaniemi in the process, which would obviously, help make the trade happen. You'd have to put in some, at least a first rounder or two as well. But I could see that maybe being a possibility.
Yeah, any trade has got to have Kotkaniemi going the other way. And I like adding Kadri to that, 1-2-3 punch that they already have down there, Ryan. Like Jordan Stahl is still, in a class amongst his own, probably when you're talking about two-way centers, even at his age. But having Kadri and Stahl, like, as a coach, Rod Brind'Amour would not be, having to worry about, all right, do I have the responsible centerman to go deep in the playoffs?
Not to mention just like the intangibles of what Kadri brings to a locker room, to a group, the playoff experience, the clutch gene, the moments that he's been a part of when he was on that run with Colorado. The guy was had a nail or a screw sticking out of his hand when he scored. I mean, like, he'll do anything. So you want to get over the hump. There's a guy who knows what it takes and will do anything to do it. So I like that. I like that a lot for Carolina as they try to finally get to the promised land of the Stanley Cup final. Well, talking about a team who's been kind of falling out of grace a little bit, the Washington Capitals, 3-6-1 in their last 10, 8 points out of a spot. And again, the East it's a weird place, so things change. Teams go on runs. You never know. They did get this huge extra point in the shootout last night against Detroit, a little bit crazy. So their goalie, Charlie Lindgren, gets hurt at the end of overtime, stays in for the shootout, gets the win, but gets carried off the ice by his teammates afterwards. Logan Thompson is already injured. We're not sure exactly what happened there. Took a puck off the mask. So what exactly is going on for Washington, and what's the concern level of, whether they could be looking at being sellers, or is this just wait and see what happens with the goalies?
I think you got to wait and see. And to your point, Katie, they're 8 points back of a wild card spot, but they're only 6 points back of the third place New York Islanders with a game in hand.
Weird
so
place.
They have a better chance of finishing third than they do of finishing eighth, I guess, as the final wild card team. And, if I'm the Caps, this is a team that, had the best regular season record last year in the NHL. And to your point, they have the goaltending, if healthy, to be a good team. And you got to go for it. Ryan was talking a week ago about Anze Kopitar and how you have to go for it because, this is his last year. Well,
Yes,
how many
right.
more years does Alex Ovechkin have? And, how many more years do the Capitals have where they can say we have sort of Stanley Cup aspirations while number 8 is still in the lineup? And it's probably not that many. Like, this might be the last hurrah for the Caps. So I think you got to go for it. I don't think you have to sell the farm to go for it, but you definitely have to think that this is still a playoff potential team.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny. It's like there's only one team ahead of them in the wild card race, and that's Florida, which is obviously a very dangerous team, especially as they get healthier.
Yeah.
But I do think that if you look at the Caps, like, they're a very good 5-on-5 team, one of the best in the NHL. Their problem is that their special teams are terrible. So I would almost wonder, like, would they maybe add a player that could help out on the penalty kill and to a lesser extent the power play in order to kind of just clean up those little details of the game where, one more PK or one more power play goal is the difference between a win and a loss for them, because sort of structurally they're a pretty decent team. And the other thing is the goalie situation is concerning right now, like on this day we are speaking, but we do have the Olympic break coming up, and Logan Thompson is either healthy enough to go with Canada to the Olympics or he's not and he rests.
Yeah.
Charlie Lindgren obviously will get that rest. I'm not sure how many games they have left before the break, but I think they brought up Clay Stevenson. So you do what you have to if Lindgren or Thompson aren't available, and then you take that break and you rest as much as you can. It'll be interesting to see, what Washington looks like after the break and if they can go on a bit of a run.
Yeah. That's fair. All right. Well, Ryan, you've got your latest draft rankings coming out for the hockeynews.com. So, who is the latest top 3?
Well, it's very interesting because I feel it's now kind of a cluster at the top. And right now I'm going Keaton Verhoff, the defenseman from University of North Dakota, number 1. But again, this is like a cluster. And I was kind of joking to myself. It's like, whatever the last scout I talked to, whoever they say is number 1 will be my number 1 right now, because I know it's probably going to change throughout the course of the second half. And as we go into the draft itself and find out who's picking first. But Keaton Verhoff, has been excellent for North Dakota. He's putting up a ton of points for a freshman defenseman. And if you look at the impact that Matthew Schaefer's had on the Islanders, you can see, like, okay, well, even a young blue liner can be very good very soon these days. Then I go with Gavin McKenna and Ivor Stenberg, 2 wingers. And, I give Verhoff the nod right now because wingers are not as important as defensemen. Sorry, wingers. That's just kind of reality. I think McKenna has the higher offensive upside. I know some people are concerned about his play away from the puck, and that's valid. But I just wonder, if you can have somebody that has the skills that he does, are you willing to maybe work with him on the other side of the puck? I think teams would. And Ivor Stenberg, great World Juniors, not as big as Gavin McKenna, but he's quick, he's hockey strong, great on his edges. I think there's a lot of good defensemen after the top 3 as well. They'll make things interesting. But for now, I'm going Verhoff, McKenna, Stenberg, and they're all very tight. Like, toss the names in a hat and pull one out. Or, depending on the team, they might have a need where they say, well, we really need scoring punch, or we really need, a defenseman that could hypothetically play 24 minutes a night for us in the near future.
How nice is it that we don't know who the number 1 overall pick is, and we're basically almost in February right now. Like, it doesn't happen a whole lot. I guess the last time would have been when Juraj Slafkovsky went number 1 overall, and we all thought maybe Shane Wright was going to be the guy. And there was a lot of questions, again, Logan Cooley, as he headed into that draft. And, it's just more entertaining, I think.
I
when
hate it.
you know that versus
Well,
when
Ryan
Tavares
hates
was
it.
number 1 overall, and fans were literally wearing Islanders Tavares jerseys to the draft that year. It's
Yep.
like, well, okay, like there goes the suspense. Like I'm a big kind of like, don't spoil the ending for me here. And this is kind of like, like don't spoil the draft. Like I want to arrive to the draft going, I have no idea who Team A is going to be picking, and it feels like that. Like we don't even know the position that's going to be picking.
True.
Yeah.
No, I hate it because like I want to be right, and also I have to put out a magazine, like a month or two before the draft, and I got to put somebody on that cover, and I like to know who's going to be on that cover. But we can't
Not
go
about
with
you,
multiple.
Ryan.
Yeah. No, it's all about me. But we could put multiple people on the cover, and that might be the case this year.
Yeah,
like
it could
5
be
of them, man.
it could be three guys sharing the spotlight.
We did 4 one year, and it was the year that was like Draisaitl, Reinhart, Bennett, Ekblad.
Oh yeah.
And then they all played each other in the Stanley Cup final.
Yes,
I remember that year. It didn't like no matter who you or depending on who you talked to, it was either like, oh yeah, Bennett's going number 1. I think Central Scouting had number 1. I know the Hockey News had that year as the number 1, but it seemed like it was going to be either Ekblad, Bennett, or Reinhardt. I don't remember anyone saying Draisaitl. So
Ryan, I had a GM tell me he would take Draisaitl first, but his team wasn't picking high.
Yeah.
So
there you go. So maybe there's that 4th guy. Who's the 4th guy, Ryan? Maybe that's the guy that we should be eyeing right now.
It could be Chase Reed, the defenseman of Sault Ste. Marie. He is the highest offensive upside of all defensemen, and he's 6'2". And he's getting pretty good away from the puck as well. Like defensively, he's come a long way, and he has a lot of upside. So Chase Reed might be in the mix too.
There you go. You heard it first. Ryan Kennedy, Chase Reed.
I love it. It's exciting. I love talking about this stuff. And again, who gets that number 1 overall pick also plays a huge part, like you mentioned, Ryan. So for over 75 years, the Hockey News has been your ultimate hockey fix for more than just the draft edition. And now you can get 12 issues delivered right to you with stories, stats, even a bonus issue to kick things off. Head over to thn.com to get in on all of that action. Coming up, we've got the BetMGM playbook with Gary Pearson. Well, it's time now for the BetMGM playbook with Gary Pearson. And Gary, today we are talking about those poor teams who have never won a Stanley Cup and which one has the best chance of doing it this year. We have a few in the mix: the San Jose Sharks, the Buffalo Sabres, the Minnesota Wild, and then those poor Utah Mammoth who have been waiting for so long to win. But those are the teams that have never been able to win it. And let's start out with this conversation that's so interesting about the San Jose Sharks, the fact that we're having this conversation at all. And a big part of that is because of Macklin Celebrini. Is he enough to give the Sharks this chance at their first Stanley Cup? Or do they need more than just that?
I tell you what, if Celebrini brings the Sharks to the promised land, I think the NHL is going to undertake a bunch of rigorous testing to make sure he is indeed human. Because
so true.
That would be a feat. I mean, for me, when you look at the Sharks, like it's incredible what they've done. It is, but I think like defensively, they're one of the worst defensive teams in the league in goals against. Yeah. They're about, I think, between 18th and 22nd in goals for. Goaltending is pretty suspect, statistically speaking, anyways. So I think that they need some help. Whether that's going to come or not by the trade deadline, I'm not sure, but I think they definitely need help.
Yeah,
it'd be. You know what? When you look at San Jose, you're right, Gary. On paper, it's Macklin Celebrini in the Sharks. Like it's almost like it's a front man and his backup band, but. That's a team where if I'm looking at the trade deadline, they really are one more piece away from being in the mix with, the Colorados, the Dallases, the Tampa Bays in that Stanley Cup contender. And the thing I like about the Sharks is they play in the Pacific where it is as wide open as you can imagine. And the fact that you don't have to see maybe like, as long as you finish in the top 3, you don't have to see a team from the Central until the conference final. That's got to play into it.
Yeah, no question. I mean, we talked about it earlier in the show, right? There are some interesting rumors floating around about San Jose and the things that they could be doing. But let's look at the bigger picture here of these different teams, right? Just to kind of take the scope out. You've got Utah. They're obviously in a difficult position being in the Central. Same with the Minnesota Wild. The Buffalo Sabres, however, are kind of in an interesting position, especially being on this can't lose run. Gary, kind of what's your sense of what Buffalo could do to maybe give themselves this first shot at it?
Yeah, I think like if we're talking in terms of trades, I think that they need another forward, potentially in the top 9. I haven't heard a lot of buzz coming out of Buffalo, but I think someone like maybe Charlie Coyle might fit the bill. He's playing for Columbus right now. He's, I think, the 3rd leading scorer. He plays in both ends very well. He's had some success in the postseason with Boston previously. Well, this is years back, but I think he's a good fit. I haven't heard too much more buzz out of Buffalo about trades. Anything from your perspective, Michael, on the trade front there?
The fact that you're even saying trade in Buffalo and we're talking about them being a buyer, not a seller.
Selling. Yes.
Like mind blown, Gary. And it's a testament to what those Sabres have been able to do. And the guy I feel sorry for is Kevin Adams, who really, this is Kevin Adams' team. I know Jarmo Kekalainen took over in the midst of this incredible run that they're, on right now. But let's face it, Jarmo hasn't had to do anything. Like he's still laying low, saying, "Okay, do what you guys are doing, and when I need to add a piece, I will." But to your point, I love what Buffalo has been able to do this year. I think they could be a sneaky good team in the playoffs. They've got the defense. They're finally getting the goaltending, and they've got some grit now. Like, how can you not like what Josh Doan has been able to provide in terms of, a two-way game up front?
Yeah, what's happening with Kevin Adams having gone from Buffalo is reminding me of what happened to Dale Talon when he left the Chicago Blackhawks. Yeah. And then they immediately won, and that team was an absolute monster. And I remember hearing afterwards that Joel Quenneville called him right after to congratulate him on winning the Stanley Cup. So if Buffalo does go on that run, somebody probably owes Kevin Adams a phone call. But on that note, out of these teams that we just mentioned, Gary, kick us off on who you would put your money on if you had to make a decision out of these 4 to win it.
So the best odds right now are Minnesota, but actually I'm on Buffalo's bandwagon here. There's a few reasons. We'll try and make it slightly logical. First of all, my son's been watching a lot of Disney movies, so I'm really into the fairy tale run. Secondly,
Cinderella, yes.
Secondly, Buffalo, they have the 3rd best home record in the league. They're the best team in the NHL since the 9th of December. They're 23-1 since then. I mean, that's almost half their game. So, we're not. I don't think we're talking about a flash in the pan here. Also, like they're unbelievably. I think they're well suited for the playoffs. I think they can surprise a lot of teams. If you look at the Eastern Conference right now and you look at who's in the playoffs, and there's starting to be some discrepancy there between the wild card spots and those that aren't in it. I think we're talking about an 8-point gap now. Florida is actually 8 points out of a playoff spot now.
Yeah.
When you look at those teams that are going to the playoffs as of right now in the Eastern Conference, I don't see a whole bunch of juggernauts there. I mean, Carolina, okay, for sure. Tampa Bay, okay, for sure. Beyond that, I mean, you have Pittsburgh, you have Detroit, you have Montreal, you have Boston, but I can see Buffalo taking on any of those teams right now. Especially with how kind of exuberant and effervescent they are. And I love the confidence. Can you imagine Buffalo winning the Stanley Cup, bringing the first championship to that city for the Bills? I mean,
oh my goodness.
that would be something.
It would be. I mean, you say, can you imagine it? I genuinely can't, but I love the idea of it. Michael, what are you thinking if you had to put some actual cold hard cash on one of these 4? Who would you go with?
Yeah, I like Gary's pick, and I'll be on Chippewa Street, celebrating with those Sabres if they ever do it. But I'm going to go out west, Katie. I really like the Minnesota Wild, and I get it. You've got to get past the Colorado Avalanche and obviously the Dallas Stars to even get to the conference final. Never mind the Stanley Cup final, but not a whole lot of holes in that lineup. They're getting the goaltending from Wallstedt and Gustafsson. They've got the defense now with Quinn Hughes and Brock Faber, and their forward group with Kaprizov, Eriksson Ek, Matt Boldy. it is as deep as any team in the NHL. And I think that Bill Guerin is not done. I wouldn't be surprised if they're in the mix for a huge addition at the trade deadline. But, even if they don't add a big piece, they're so good right now. And again, Colorado, as we've seen now in the last couple of weeks, they're not as, unstoppable as we might have thought. Like, they are a mortal team. And if they kind of cool down at the wrong time, don't be surprised if they go out in the first or second round.
Yeah, again, because you've got all these absolute monsters facing off. It's a lot of it going to have to do with timing. What say you, Gary, on the Minnesota Wild making a run?
I like the Wild. I do. I think that they had a really hot stint, and they were one of the best teams in the league for about 2 months. I think it was November, December. They were firing on all cylinders. I mean, they've gone through a slight malaise recently, but I think every team does. It'll be interesting to see what they do near the trade deadline. There is murmurs that potentially they would trade Wallstedt. I mean, they have to get something seriously good in return for them to do that. In my books, sure, Gustafsson is still in his prime, but to let a 23-year-old depart like of Wallstedt's potential stature, they'd have to get some real big pieces back. Quality team though, through and through. They're good in every position, in every facet. And once they get hot again, which I assume they will, they can take on anyone in the league when the playoffs come around. Very, very stable defensively, which is what we know a lot of the time championships are based upon. So I like them. I like them coming out of the West, but things have to kind of fall into place at the right time for them.
I love it. It's a good conversation we have talking about teams that haven't won, some fresh blood with the Stanley Cup. So we will see if any of these teams are there when it's all said and done down the final stretch. That does it for the BetMGM playbook. Thanks so much, Gary. Now let's get into some rapid fire. Well, thanks so much, Gary. All right, guys, let's get into some rapid fire. We have the Stadium Series outdoor game in Tampa, and it's a pirate map for the layout. We're just leaning real into the Buccaneers, obviously, as they should be. Is this one of the best designs and kind of layouts that you've seen set up for an outdoor game, Michael?
100%. And it's happening. It's coinciding with Gasparilla Fest in Tampa. And I don't know if you've ever been in Tampa for Gasparilla Fest.
I've avoided it.
The All-Star game was in Tampa years ago and right there for it. And I remember being at the Marriott just, down the street from the rink, and you'd hear cannons going off because just a bunch of boats in the water and everyone's dressed in pirate regalia. And I loved it. It felt like I was at Disney World. Felt like you were just kind of like in make-believe land. So I think this is going to be really cool. I love that they're leaning right in. I imagine all the fans are going to be like, pirate themed and maybe carrying fake swords and eye patches. And the players, I imagine, are going to be dressed that way as they walk from their buses to the arena. So
the arrival outfits.
It should be a new one. And apparently the weather is not going to be crazy warm. So the ice should be pretty good.
Could be some flurries. Gary Bettman with the crystal ball for some colder weather during his outdoor game. Ryan, what do you think about the whole pirate theme?
Oh, I love it so much. I think the map looks so cool. I know they've named different segments after Tampa players, which is awesome. And I agree with Mike. Tampa is the perfect place for this. I mean, I love pirates. I feel with the Gasparilla folks, they're more of a, like it's wine o'clock somewhere t-shirt kind of pirates, where I tend to hew more historical, but I still appreciate it. And I think it's going to look awesome. This is an event where it'd be great to be there, but even for TV purposes, I think this is one that's going to look very good because of that layout they've done.
And it's a meaningful game. Like you've got Tampa, obviously they're in first, but Boston's hunting for a playoff spot still, and it's meaningful hockey. It's not just going to be an exhibition kind of game, I think.
Yeah, no, it's going to be intense. The vibes are good. The weather will be a little cold, so the ice maybe will have a better shot. So lots of fun things to look forward to. I always like seeing what the guys show up in too. It's like, I don't know, like sometimes they really lean into it and I love it. I hope they do that and that the guys are like kind of like having fun with what they're wearing as opposed to feeling like they're toddlers being forced to dress up for the holidays. All right. Well, we talked a little bit earlier about goalies being hurt and just teams needing goaltending. It's been kind of a theme throughout the season. So should Marc-Andre Fleury come out of retirement? Because there certainly seem to be quite a few teams that could use a little help in the net.
I'm going to go no on this one. And it feels like he's of sort of two minds. Like he misses the game, but he also did all his goodbyes last year. And I think he was saying he'd be a bit sheepish going back to teams that had like feted him last year.
It'd be weird, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I know it's hard for players to leave the game when they've been there so long. But I feel with Marc-Andre Fleury, like, you know, his legacy is cemented. And he has earned the right to just chill out now.
Yeah, you've got to be really, really desperate to be reaching out for a Marc-Andre Fleury at this point in his career. I kind of agree with Ryan, or 100% agree with Ryan.
Yeah.
You know, never mind the fact that he already did his like tour of, you know, goodbyes. You know, again, that would seem kind of weird. You know, him going back. I'm back.
Home games only.
Yeah.
Hey, how are you doing, fellow kids? It's like this guy won't leave. Like,
just be a goaltending coach. How about the next generation?
There's lots of ways for guys to get involved in the game because we do know how hard it is for them to leave it. But going back and playing, and then you just worry, like if it goes really badly, like you don't want that final like taste in your mouth to be like, oh, Fleury came back and he was terrible, and now everyone's like, it's just weird. Anyways, all right. So the Seattle Kraken are giving folks free hats after Jared McCann's hat-trick goal gets called back. And everyone threw their hat on the ice, and it was not a hat trick. He did not get a hat trick. So is there something in hockey that you could think of that's worse than losing potentially a hat you liked and having it not even be for a hat trick?
Yeah, it's embarrassing. And years ago, I was covering a playoff series, Philly against the Islanders. I want to say Claude Giroux had a hat trick. That similar thing got called back. A cheeky Philly writer wrote in his column, it was a case of premature hatulation, which I thought was just the greatest line that you could come up with. You know, sorry if that one is, he got printed. Okay. So
hilarious.
But it's I want my hat back if that's the case. And good on Seattle for kind of, you know, leaning into this.
Yeah. I care too much about my hats. I don't want to part with any of my hats, and they're expensive. So I would feel, I feel like in the moment when you threw the hat, it would be glorious. And I don't know, like, would that feeling justify, you know, the letdown of it not being a hat trick? I don't know. Probably not. That'd be a very, very tough one, especially because of the elation and the actual hat itself.
Yeah.
If I had a burner hat, maybe that's something. If
you got to come to the game with a cheap hat.
You just pick one up at a gas station or something. That would be all right.
Randy Carlisle, when he was coaching the Leafs, showed up at one of the morning skates, and we were like, "What is that hat you're wearing?" And he goes, "Oh, funny story." He's like, you know, I forget who got the hat trick like the week before, and he's like, "Yeah, they just have them in a bag, so I just grabbed one." I'm like,
"It's true.
You're a coach making like I don't know how much you're making, you know, at least a
really.
mil." And you're grabbing just some guy's hat. Like, I don't know what.
Secondhand hats.
They just throw them all into a giant black trash bag, and ultimately they end up getting donated usually. So it's
the head coach, apparently.
The head coach just goes through. He's like, before we take these to the less fortunate, I'd like to peruse the selection just to see if anything sticks out. I love that. All right. I'm more of like if it's like a player I really love, maybe I'll throw the hat. Otherwise, I'm just hanging on to it. Yeah. All right. Well, we know that the Olympic ice is going to be a little bit smaller. So what is more important to have on a smaller rink? A skilled, speedy scorer or a physical checking forward?
For me, it's the physical checking forward. Less space out there. The game is faster when it's small. So I do believe that using size to your advantage can kind of nullify some of the smaller guys. And clearly, Bill Guerin agrees with me based on the way he has built Team USA.
I was like, okay, yeah. So maybe he's onto something, Michael.
I think you need long limbs, Katie.
Totally.
Yes, we talked about this.
Reach around. Like, I heard the quote from Doug Armstrong, the GM for Team Canada, saying like our defense, it's going to be like swimming through arms because of, Travis Sanheim is a big dude, and same with Colton Parayko. So I think that's going to be helpful, is like that extra reach when you take away a couple inches on the ice surface.
Got Tage Thompson. He's like the longest dude going too. So
There you
everybody's
go.
bringing the gangly. The gangly guys are in. They're at high
There you go.
demand. All right, last one as we wrap up this week on a Friday. Any quotes that made you stop, scratch your head, question everything? What do we got this week, guys?
I'll start it off. Buffalo's Alex Tuck was asked about playoff aspirations, and his great quote coming off another win, those red hot Sabres. We're not just going for the playoffs, we're going for the cup. Ooh, you love to hear it. Like, sign this guy up right away. What are they doing, Yarmo? Like,
How do they not have? Yeah, you lock him down.
Yeah, that's the guy I want playing for my team.
There you go. For me, it was Minnesota coach John Hines after an ugly win. He said they're not all going to be Picassos. And it's very true. Sometimes you just need the 2 points. They can't all be, Quinn Hughes hat trick games. Sometimes you just need to grind it out. And it's a good life lesson for all.
Well, hold on a sec. Aren't Picassos kind of like, they're not very symmetrical? They're not very
true. He
Like,
did
I know
have
he's a great
that.
artist.
Picasso is actually like ugly and weird looking, kind of. So he almost is like.
That's what he's aiming for. The weird
right.
wins.
He should have
Yeah.
been more for like a, like a Monet, very,
There you go.
very
Yeah.
pretty. Get the flowers going. My quote is a quote that I can't say because it involves way too many expletives. But if anyone saw the hilarious video from the penalty box of Sean Dursey speaking to Carlisle, you don't need to be an expert lip reader. And it was just absolutely, it was so funny. It was one of the most clear, they were going at it moments, and I just thought it was hilarious because it was just like, oh, this is just hockey. And the cameraman just leaned into it. He was just like, I'm going to film this entire thing. We're all going to get to enjoy it.
Those cameramen these days, man, they're all everywhere. It seems like they're catching hockey players at their best or worst.
Yeah, this one was great because then there were still people commenting like what he was actually saying, like lip reader jokingly. And it was like, can you tell me somewhere I can get dinner after the game? Like, just like really great stuff. Good stuff, guys. That's great. I love it. Always some fun quotes around the NHL. And lots of good conversations that'll be coming up as we get ready for the Olympics. Ryan's got his hair cut. He is ready for Milan. So we will look forward
I trimmed
to
up as
hearing all
well.
about
Like,
that.
no one
Yeah,
noticed
sorry,
me
Michael
here.
got a
I'm
haircut
sorry,
too. That's my bad. Michael, your hair also looks great.
but-
All right, that does it for this episode of the Hockey News Big Show. For Michael Traikos and Ryan Kennedy, I'm Katie Gaus, and we will see you all next week.